how excited we are that you guys are coming down here for Glam Fest, and I was wondering how you feel about heading down under for such an amazing festival.
I mean, I'm super thrilled. I've been to Australia one time previous, in case the listeners, readers don't know. I played Sydney and Melbourne in February of 2007, so about 16 years ago. But I played with the Dead Things, with Jules. I'm sure you're probably familiar with who that is.
Yep, yeah. So
his band was kind of my backup band, but I'll be, I'm all the more stoked that I get to bring, the Tuff band down, including my partner Todd Chase on, who founded this band and is the guy that actually hired me into the band in the summer of '87. He's never been to Australia. This will be his first time, and we're stoked. And aside from doing shows like this, when we get on an event with other bands where there's going to be larger crowds, a festival-style atmosphere, it's always a great thing. And this should be interesting for sure. Obviously, a lot of moving parts with 6 internationals and a couple of national Australian bands with Sisters Doll and Catalano, and then a couple, 1 or 2 locals at each show. But we'll be ready. I mean, we'll be getting on a flight Sunday night late, arriving in Brisbane early Tuesday, and Wednesday's the first show, and then it's,
Yeah. Does it...
foot in the ground, full speed ahead.
Does it add to the excitement for you knowing that for fans of Tuff that have been fans of the band now for almost 40 years, it'll be the first time they get to see you play live in Australia as Tuff? Is that something that adds to the excitement for you?
100%. And at this point, I've been in almost 30 countries, and I've played in probably 25 of them. And every time I go somewhere, Brazil, Spain, Hungary, Romania, Czech Republic, Sweden, Mexico, anytime I go somewhere, somebody rolls up and, tells me a story. They tell me, when I was 15, I bought your record. When I was in college, in high school, I did this, I did that. And a lot of times it's grown men that are telling me this, or grown women, people that are in their 40s or 50s. Equally so, I get kids that come up to me, and I say kids because they're kids to me, that are 16, 19, 20. They know every word. They have, bootleg Tuff shirts on. And I'm like, how did you find out? How do you know about our band? You're only 19 years old. Yep. And they're like, oh, from YouTube, or, some of them say my dad gave me some of his old records. And social media has definitely helped us expose our music and, a lot of what we did 25, 30, 35 years ago to a younger generation. But it's super exciting to do this. I mean, I've been in Europe a lot over the years, only been to Australia once, and only did the couple shows with me. So you're hitting the nail on the head, being able to play. I mean, if there's 600 or 800 people there each night, 90% of those people have never seen us live.
Yep.
So we're thrilled and can't wait to kick some ass in front of them,
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the multi-generational fans, because I got into your music through my dad. I'm 43, so my dad was listening to your music. I started listening to your music when I was a teenager. But there seems to have been this thing in Australia in the last 10 years where the new generation are so interested in music from the 80s and the 90s and the 70s, and you go into vinyl stores and go into music stores and you see kids piling over the secondhand vinyl, and even my own niece, she's into more bands from the 80s and 90s than what she is modern day bands. Do you find that at your shows now, that you get that multi-generational mix, like you said, of kids from 16 right through to people aged like in their 50s and 60s?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my daughter is 19 years old. My son is 17, and I've been in the car with them, and they have a playlist. And, at some point, ABBA comes on, and my daughter says, I love this band. And I says, ABBA? I remember ABBA when I was 10 years old in 1976.
Yep.
And then at some point, I'm in the car with them another time, and Insane Clown Posse comes on. I know Insane Clown Posse. I listened to them in the 90s, and I said to my son, I go, what is this? And, he's like, this is Insane Clown Posse. And I'm like, how in the fuck do you know who Insane Clown Posse is? So, but, and the same thing is happening with Tuff, I mean, and I'm speaking for all the bands. I'm sure it's happening for Steve and Pretty Boy Floyd and Chip with Enough's Enough and Tammy with Faster Pussycat. Going different places, going around the world and meeting people. I mean, I've been in places where half the crowd cannot speak English.
Yep.
And they're singing the words to I Ain't Kissing You Goodbye. They're singing the words to Good Guys We're Black and All New Generation. And it's a great feeling, makes me feel old. When somebody goes, oh, I'm 27, and I'm like, wow, this is an older fan. She's almost 30, and I still got her by almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I came with my mom. She loves you, And then I meet her mom, and they're like, her mom's like, 53 or something, and I'm like, wow, time's flying, but it is great that fans of all different walks are experiencing and discovering this music, and the internet is definitely part of the reason for that.
Yeah. Do you think shows like Stranger Things are a big part of that as well? I mean, Stranger Things is every song in that show is from the 80s, and we've seen people like Kate Bush's careers skyrocket again because of that show. Do you think that show's part of that reason that people go out and they start listening to old school Metallica, or they listen to Judas Priest, and then they start hunting down other music in that genre as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, here's the thing. In America, there's this, I think it's an insurance company, and they've been using classic 80s bands in some of their commercials. Europe is one of them.
Yep.
Rat got used in one of them. And I remember somebody said, I read something somewhere that the final countdown by Europe had it had sold so many units and downloads within the couple months that commercial was airing that it was essentially re-entering the charts. I mean, the song is, when is it from? 1985?
Yep.
It's like, it's 35 years old or more, almost 40 years old.
Yep.
So, you can't deny it, though. I mean, those couple of Europe songs are massive hits. Round and Round by Rat.
Yep.
I mean, in America, it's been for years that Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister got played, Ozzy, classic Ozzy, like Crazy Train, got played at sports stadiums for football games, baseball games, in arenas for basketball. And yeah, there's some modern music that they'll put in there, but at some point, Guns N' Roses' Welcome to the Jungle became one of the go-to songs when a football game is starting, or some type of an arena event is starting, that has nothing to do with music. It has to do with sports and football players, and it just goes to show you that some of what these bands created. Most of those bands I just noted, being from Sunset Strip, Motley, Rat, GNR, obviously. Twisted Sister is a New York band, as is Kiss. Kiss has had a lot of songs too that have been mainstays for those kind of events, and it's a trickle-down effect. Obviously, Tuff and Enough's Enough and Faster Pussycat and some of our bands, we're not nearly as big as that, but we do get some nods here and there, and when they get a snippet in a TV show or some kind of an online, top-rated list of great albums or worst albums, whatever, it all is relevant, and it all helps kind of propel the brand and the band name.
Yeah. Knowing that there's a new generation of people out there listening to Tuff's music, does that inspire you to want to create new music for a new generation?
I mean, I get asked that a lot. When are you going to make a new record? The new music is not, it doesn't sell anywhere near what the classic does.
Yeah.
So for instance, for Tuff, our debut came out on Atlantic Records. We were signed in 90. And what comes around goes around. There's a couple of MTV style videos out there, and those handful of songs, I Hate Kissing You Goodbye, Good Guys We're Black, All New Generation, those are three of the songs that are always in the set because they're like our Talk Dirty to Me, Nothing But a Good Time, and I Won't Forget You, or, Every Rose. Yeah. Or like Motley Crue as Girls, 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 and Home Sweet Home, and Dr. Feelgood, and Looks That Kill are always going to be in the set. If we made a brand new record today, and then I put it on the internet and said, okay, here it is, the reissue of What Comes Around Goes Around, with some cool liner notes and a couple of old classic photos, or here's a whole brand new record, the classic reissue, remix, remaster, re-release would sell 40 to 1. Yep. So, if anything, I've been inspired along the way at some points to put out, a specialty song. American Hair Band, for instance. When I reformed the band in 2000, obviously there was a big to-do, if you remember, about Y2K. In other words, the 1900s are gone. Like the little calendar thing that said 19 blank blank used to say 1984, 89, 90, 91, 92. Now the 1900s are gone. It's 2000. And when I relaunched the band and restarted it, I wanted to do a song that would be significant to what Tuff stood for. And there's a song on our first record called The All New Generation, which talks about the generations of music. Are you familiar with that song?
Yeah, yep. That's actually really funny because it's really funny because that's the track that we're playing of yours straight after this interview.
Yeah. So in the pre-chorus, the first one is Elvis Presley, Richie Jerry, Little Richard, Buddy Bear. You know the Beatles had a hard day's night. The second one is The Who, The Doors, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, and O Van Halen. Aerosmith Told You, Walk This Way. Then the third verse, coming out of the pre-chorus, it's Cooper, Kiss, The Oz and Motley, Poison, Axl, John Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Is the Youth Gone Wild. That was 1989.
Yep.
We recorded in 1990. So I was talking about everything from Elvis Presley to Skid Row, about the all-new generation. Rock and roll is communication. Boys will be boys, girls, girls, girls. Sing it out loud all around the world. That was our message. So, a decade later in 2000, I'm like, I want to pick up where All New Generation left off. But I wasn't going to sing about Marilyn Manson and Korn or Power Man 5000.
Yep.
But I did take a Kid Rock song, which sampled the Metallica song and part of a Twisted Sister song, and came up with this anthem to say, hey, I'm here. I'm the American Hair Band. Remember us? Because in the 90s, it was not cool to be that band. It was not cool to be from Sunset Strip or have blonde hair or have anything to do with what Motley Crue, Poison, and Bon Jovi stood for in the 80s. So when I put out American Hair Band, it was, a message to say that, it was okay to be the hair band.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was a subliminal, but obviously a very audible fuck you.
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain is gone, but I'm back, wearing leather pants and a backwards hat, with guitar slung low where the down boys go. The night train's back, so on with the show. And, and so it goes. So that song obviously made a mark, and I was celebrating not just me and Tuff, but where we came from and all those bands that went with it,
Yep.
Who cares about Weezer and the Screamin' Trees when we got White Line and, of course, the Sleaze Bees? Give Pearl Jam and Eddie a big fuck you. So that was my message to the grunge haters, the dark end of the music industry from the 90s that kind of shunned everything we stood for. And I think my message has resonated because it's now 35 plus years later that Tuff's going to, step on stage in Australia and play in front of a whole group of fans, young and old, and they're going to be singing those lyrics.
Definitely. I was going to ask that, about, like you just said, the music in the early days wasn't cool, and one of the things I notice now is that T-shirts that would get you bashed when I was at school, that you would wear, and because you loved that band, and the tougher kids had beat you up because you were wearing that band's T-shirt, are the bands that are popular and have lasted to today. Going right back to when Tuff first started out, did you expect that in 2023 you guys would still be going strong and touring the world, especially with the way that the music was viewed back then?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't be shocked. If you would have asked me in 1985 or 90 or even 2000, in 2023, will you go to Australia to play, on a glam tour with Faster Pussycat and Pretty Boy Floyd and Enough's Enough? I would have said, you're crazy. Yep. I'd also probably have thought that you were crazy if you would say, hey, guess what? Between 2004 and 2022, you're going to play Brazil 7 times. I'm going to get back from Australia, and 2 weeks later, I'm getting on a plane to go to Thailand. I'm going to play in Bangkok.
Yep.
So, I've played in Prague. I've played in Barcelona. I've played in Stockholm. I've played in Budapest, Hungary. I've played in Petroșani, Romania. So, I'm not playing stadiums, and no, we're not as big as AC/DC or Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue, but there's a mark that we made with our band, and myself and Todd, we're proud of that. And like I did with that song and my website Metal Sludge, I've continued to fly the flag to say, this is who we are, take it or leave it, Yeah. And if people don't like the band, I don't care. I mean, there used to be pigeonholes. And there still is, but even in the 80s, when Metallica was coming up, there was a sense of like Metallica, Megadeth. Those bands weren't taken as seriously by the industry. They were critically acclaimed, and they did have some fans, but, Armored Saint and Metallica and Wasp and Anthrax and Overkill and Slayer, they were playing large clubs and theaters, and eventually they got, snuck on as an opener, on an arena tour here or there, Metallica opening for Ozzy. But at some point, they stuck to their guns, and Metallica became one of the biggest bands on the planet.
Yep.
And a band like Wasp, Wasp is going to Europe right now to tour, and I think they're playing, 15 shows in Sweden alone. They'll play 30 or 40 shows in Europe, and so, there's room for everybody, though. And the one thing that's a lot of people don't realize and the fans don't realize is that the business is small. And at some point, a lot of these bands, whether it's somebody from Metallica or Megadeth or Poison or Bon Jovi, Skid Row or Warrant, a lot of these guys are friends, just because somebody's music is heavier doesn't mean they disqualify them in life or as a friend. And there used to be a little bit of a competitive edge, that you had when you were younger in your 20s, but we're all grown up past that. So all the feuding that, say, the rap bands do, we've had our feuds in rock and roll, but obviously not to a point where it got out of control ever. And I think there's a respect across the board for anybody that's done this for a period of time.
Definitely. Stevie, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly, so I've got 2 quick questions I wanted to ask. First of all,
yep.
What have you got in plans for your Aussie fans? Have you started to look at what set list you're going to play for Glam Fest? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about what you guys are hoping to play?
We're going to play music from 4 records. Most of it, about half the record, we'll play from the What Comes Around Goes Around debut. Pretty much most of what everyone expects. We're also going to play American Hair Band off of the History of Tuff, which has obviously become a theme and an anthem that we play at every show. We're going to probably dig into the Glam Years archives, which are, a collection of demos we did in 88 and 89 at Sound City and Sunset Sound. Probably play Sinner Street, which Sinner Street is a song that we wrote about Sunset Strip. It's got a very Motley Poison-esque kind of sleazy, mid-late 80s feel. We'll play a couple of songs off of Religious Fix, which was obviously a little harder, a little darker. That came out in 94, 95. But, we get 45 minutes. We'll probably squeeze out 10 songs, and half of that will be from What Comes Around Goes Around, and then a track or 2 from 2 or 3 other records,
Awesome. Well, mate, we are so looking forward to seeing you on stage here in Australia. Right now on our show, we're going to play a double shot of Tuff. We're going to play the All New Generation and American Hair band back to back. But to finish off, what would you like to say to people out there who are heading along to check you guys out playing at Glam Fest?
Hey, to all the fans in Australia, if anybody's hesitating, and I've seen some people say, oh, you know, what happens if all the bands don't show up? Well, from what I know, we all got flights, and we're all coming. So Sunday night, we'll be getting on a plane. We'll be in Brisbane by Tuesday morning, and Wednesday night, the first show kicks. Can't wait. This is something that you guys should be thrilled for, because getting all these bands in one place to come to Australia on a tour like this in a festival atmosphere in, you know, not one, not two, but 4 different cities, it's going to be cool. Everybody's going to be, you know, bringing their A game. I know everyone's excited. It's a long flight. You guys are on the bottom end of the planet from us. You know, it's a 15-hour flight. But, you know, we can't wait. My band's stoked. I'm stoked. I know the other guys I talked to are all thrilled. And everybody gets along great. So aside from the show, you know, afterwards at the hotel, probably is going to be also a little crazy, you know.
Definitely. Well, mate, thank